Okay. Okay. It's time to shuffle. I'm excited. Thanks for being here, everybody. I have a surprise, and that is that I worked out some of my technical difficulties from last week, and I am ready to have my friend Josh call in. I've got him hanging here in the wings. He's been studying tarot, and I've been looking for people that are looking to learn tarot, because that's the whole purpose of my live stream here, the shuffle. So I'm gonna call Josh in here real quick, and let's talk to Josh a little about what he's learning. All right. Hey Josh. Hi, what's up?
Hello. How's it going?
It's good. You know, it's my favorite day of the week, and I get to do this. I was talking to you just a moment ago because we were planning out what we were going to do here. What up, Bill? It's good to see you light up in the chat. I'm happy you're here. Josh, I wanted to start the stream today by doing a deep dive into one card, just to get us started while we all settle in. And I'm wondering what card you would like that to be.
My favorite card in the deck is the Fool. It's a major arcana card, which we haven't quite gotten into yet. But it is my favorite card in the deck.
It's a favorite. That's one. Let's look at the Fool. It's a good one to start with if you're going to start talking about the major arcana. A lot of the major arcana are definitely summed up as just the Fool's journey.
Exactly.
Right, this Fool is the character that gets to play it all out. And the Fool itself is a really interesting archetypal character because it represents our tabula blanca, our blank slate, our perfectly new person who has no preconception about anything. And that's a really interesting perspective to have. The Fool is sometimes touted as one of the wisest characters in all of the tarot because they never misinterpret something because of anything previous that they were thinking, because they had no thoughts going into this. They were the Fool, experiencing the world for the very first time. They represent the beginning of our major arcana cycle, and kind of pictured is this character who's walking towards a cliff's edge, and many tarot decks will do variations on this. I've got one that's our traditional Rider-Waite symbology, and they're always kind of blissfully just kind of walking forward, just out here to experience the world, and approaching a cliff's edge where, you know, if they take a couple steps, they're going to learn really fast about gravity. And this is the Fool's first lesson in the picture, is, you know, that as they come to the cliff's edge, it's like, how are they going to handle that moment that they take a step over and start to fall? And the Fool is not afraid. Absolutely not. The Fool doesn't know fear. Fool hasn't learned enough to experience or have reason for fear. Fear is, like many things, just not in the Fool's vernacular. So the Fool is walking towards this cliff like, oh, I like the feel of the sun and everything's, you know, fine. And there's always this little dog or some companion in the corner going, yo, bro, watch out. This is thing, gravity. The dog is always like barking a warning or like saying, hey, yo, look down where you're going. Here's usually the Fool is kind of pictured looking, you know, out into the just Fool is definitely an interesting and unique character. Usually when the Fool appears in a reading, there are a lot of different ways that you could interpret the Fool when it appears in a reading, and that's going to be true for any of our major arcana cards.
Right.
But when you're really looking at it in a reading, I see it offering the perspective of treat it like it's new, or often it appears when there's like a leap into the unknown kind of coming up, and the Fool is so good at leaping into the unknown. Just they haven't learned hesitation, so they're very good at it.
Right.
The Fool is very open-minded, and because everything is new to them, really this very enigmatic, very fun character.
Yeah. just to add on to that, the fool
Yeah.
is also, in my interpretation, he's like it represents like idealism. Like he's innocent and
Right.
he's not he's ignorant, but he is in search of like a better world, or he it's always in service of good, instead of just being ignorant for ignorance sake.
Right.
And I
love
think
that.
that's something that kind of gets lost in, because you see the fool is like, oh, it's just an idiot. It's like, no, he's like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
it's
doesn't
not-
know because he's innocent, but
Yes,
he wants
exactly.
to be good. Yeah.
I love that clarification because yes, the fool gets pinned as ignorant,
Yeah.
but the ignorance that the fool has isn't inherent or really the point. It's just kind of a result of their not knowing anything yet.
Exactly.
This is my
yeah.
first time. I'm not trying to be ignorant. I just literally hadn't been here before.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Like, this is all new to the fool. And I love that you see idolism in the fool.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
really cool
No,
take.
he's Yeah, it's let me find him in my deck.
Oh yeah,
Um,
because different decks will bring out different things in the cards for you too.
Yeah, so my deck, for people who don't know, is I use the Witch's Insurrection, which is a queer anti-fascist deck, but it uses mostly the same symbology and meanings as the as the Raider Smith.
Rider Waite
So
stuff.
Rider Waite. So this is my version of the Fool.
Love your deck.
So you're right, he's got the little cat instead of a little dog.
He's got his little yeah.
Yeah, and basically, and the description of him in the book is the fool is throwing a Molotov cocktail because he's like envisioning this better world, but he doesn't quite understand like what's going to happen when that Molotov cocktail breaks, and like explodes, and like what is that going to damage him, or is it going to bring about this better world? Which is like I don't know.
There it is. There's the leap into the unknown.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
you
an
know
interesting
what?
take on that
Take
character.
this. Let's find out what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why he's my favorite card, because it's, I don't know, I think there's a lot of good that is just kind of blocked by like not thinking things through all the time, at least for me. So that it's always a reminder, like take that step back.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with you in the chat there, Bill. That is a gorgeous card. You've got such a beautiful deck there, Josh.
I love this deck.
There's so much
very much.
freedom in the Fool. There's so much freedom to do anything in the Fool because the Fool doesn't have a reason to not do anything. The Fool doesn't have a reason to not throw the Molotov cocktail. Why did you do it? I don't know. I just felt like it.
Yeah.
Literally wasn't thinking past that point. I'm the Fool. That's cool. Nice. Good pick. If you had to pick a favorite card.
Thank you.
Last week I went over an entire suit. We went through all of the swords. And I wanted to do the same thing again this week. Wonder, is there a particular suit, Josh, that you would like to touch on?
Oh, how about the cups?
We'll dive into the cups.
Cool.
All right. I'm gonna sign you off here, Josh. Give you a break.
Sounds good.
Thanks for tuning in and sharing a little bit of your own what you've been learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Oh, I almost forgot. I wanted to circle back for a moment and address one more thing that came up while I was watching you there. We've also got a request in the chat, if you could, before you leave. Can you find a High Priestess in your deck? And show it off for us?
Yes, that is number
two. Pretty early.
Find that.
I'll pull up a Rider Waite High Priestess. The old traditional over here for reference. But you went to the book. You went to the book at one point looking for a definition, and that's great. Those books that come with your deck, offer so their own unique definitions for the cards for that deck. And if you find a book that you resonate with, and I'm speaking to you, Josh, but also to all readers, like, that is your Bible right there. Those are the definitions that you're accepting as, like, what you want these cards to mean to you. So it's really important to find a book or a source of definitions. I recommend to people all the time, learntarot.com is not bad.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see.
Shout out to your hair, Josh. It's beautiful. It's getting love in the chat, too.
Thank you. It is a work in progress. Here's the High Priestess.
High Priestess has arrived.
Let's see. Go back to my Zoom. There we go.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of differences already. The traditional Rider-Waite deck usually has these pillars on either side of the priestess, and you've got such this free character. Do you want to share a little bit what's in the book about that card for your deck?
Yeah. Let's see. So, intuition, secrecy, esoteric knowledge, and the subconscious. The High Priestess moves freely between the conscious, the physical world, and the subconscious metaphysical world. For her, the veil between the two realms is as insubstantial as flimsy as her gown, and all the knowledge of one sphere is visible to her from the other. She knows this knowledge is something to be shared, not hoarded, and she beckons with one hand to those who want to learn her secrets, symbolized by the pomegranate she holds in the other hand.
Wow, that's cool. They've chosen a lot of unique symbols to incorporate in there. It looks like a really cool deck.
I really love this deck.
That's
and
awesome.
It is available for purchase at hexblock.com.
There we go. You answered that question before it could come.
Support your local witches. Chicago.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Josh.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to thrust us into the cups.
Let's do it.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to pull them out of this deck here that I've got handy. This deck that I'm using is a very traditional Rider-Waite tarot. I like the symbols in the Rider-Waite. They've been adopted by a lot of decks, so there's a lot of crossover. So learning some of the symbols and images in this deck will probably translate to other decks that you'd pick up. I love looking at an entire suit and their whole cycle this way, because it's a really, really good way to understand the cards. They really build off of each other in the cycle. Understanding one space in the cycle from how it moves out of what it came from and into where it's going really offers the full understanding of what each individual step along the cycle is talking about in terms of how each of these cards are just a little snippet of human experience. And each suit kind of refers to a different sphere of our kind of experience. And the cups, or the water suit, talks all about emotions and all about our feelings and about everything that happens on that emotional level and in that emotional realm. So these cards are going to describe a lot of the different emotional spaces that we visit in the human experience. Starting at the top with the Ace of Cups. All of our aces talk about something new. And in this case, it's going to be the birth of kind of a new feeling, is kind of what's described in the scenario here with the Ace of Cups. Usually of overflowing joy is what's associated with this card, usually. I've seen it interpreted more freely and openly as any sort of emotion that's just overwhelming and fills you all the way and over the top. Just wanted to showcase that the card there's usually water pouring over the edges of the cup, because it really is an overflowing feeling. I want to come up with a fun example, because it's good to have an analogy of a real life this is the kind of story I would be telling that fits the general feelings described by the cards. And I think one of the most fun ones to do let's say you're out there in the dating world, in the dating pool, and you've just developed a new crush. That's the Ace of Cups moment. Is just like, I feel so happy. I'm just giddy, silly, glowing, can't stop smiling. I'm just overcome with this feeling. And every time I even think of their face or hear their name, the feelings come back, and it's just a rush. That simple, the beginning of a new feeling. And I said crush because I'm thinking of the beginning of a new relationship here, where, you've encountered them and you're like, oh, I feel so excited about this person that I want in my life, is an example of sort of an Ace of Cups kind of feeling. It could also be like, I've got this new job and I'm, just over the moon, so happy there. And with the new, quality of my life, moving from that previous job that was so bad, and I feel like this, a new sense of joy, a new sense of just this brand new feeling growing and flowing out of me. Working with our cards here, there are general descriptors of something to help you intuitively ping what it's pointing to. But I want to move a little forward here in the cycle, because what follows after, and I'm going to stick back to my new relationship analogy, we've just met someone who gets my heart going, and then you move into the Two of Cups, where it's more about sharing mutual feelings with people. This is a step where you've gone forward and said, oh my gosh, I've experienced this great joy because your face is pretty and I've got a crush on you. The Two of Cups is the moment where you're sharing mutual feelings with someone else. They're reciprocating the feelings, they're responding to them and reacting to them, and you're getting some feedback in some way from sort of the joy and energy that you're putting out. The two is where you're now, we're moving from the one was just cut and dry, this personal, I had this joyous moment feeling. The two is when I'm now sharing it with people around me. They're lighting up in the same way with me over this joy. And I love this. This Two of Cups is probably one of my favorites in the deck, just because it's such a fun moment. I almost was going to move on from it so quickly, but I just wanted to ruminate on it for a moment longer. There's so much about this card that is so exciting because it really is, there's still a lot of that explosiveness to the energy at this point. There's usually something growing between the two people and the cups in the picture here, and that just is emergent from the joy of sharing each other and each other's feelings together. There's a lot about the Two of Cups that taps into an empathic experience. It's a very fun place. This is the new relationship energy. This is the moment that we're vibing on it together. The Three of Cups is a space where kind of that joyousness is established as we're just going to celebrate it. And this is just, we're going to relax into enjoying the good that there is. Where the one, the ace, was kind of the formation of the new feeling in you, and the two was the feeling taking hold in the environment around you or with discrete other people. The three is where it has taken hold. And now this is kind of like your party hardy card. There's usually pictured a bunch of people dancing and singing and having a wonderful time, dancing around with their little goblets. This is just the moment where everyone's relaxing and just enjoying the frivolous pleasures of life and the pleasures of the feelings that have grown out of these two cards before. This is, oh my gosh, we're messaging each other on Tinder and I'm like so excited. Oh my gosh. And this is, oh my gosh, we had our first date and we hit it off. It was so great. Oh my gosh. And then this is like, a week or two in, we're just really enjoying it. It's just nice. And I'm just coasting on the buzz, or I'm meeting their friends and they're meeting mine. It's, we're just all kind of communing in the happiness of this new relationship, this new energy, this new feeling that's come forward. That's there's always kind of this clean progression, I feel, across all of the sets, where 1, 2, and 3 are a nice little set, 4, 5, and 6 are a nice little set, 7, 8, and 9 are a nice little set, and the 10 is an ultimate kind of resolution. And I definitely feel there's a new arc in the story here as we move into the 4th. The 4 of Cups is a card that's usually described as dissatisfaction. It's a wishing for things that aren't there. Pictured is someone who's looking at 3 cups that are upright, and there's this one ghostly cup that's usually held by some spirit, or in the traditional Rider-Waite, a little cloud with a hand, that doesn't necessarily exist, but this character who's sitting at the base of a tree is wishing for, just so desperately. They're so hung up on wishing that they had this thing that isn't there, that their attention has been taken away from the 3 cups that they already have, that a moment ago we were partying over, are now all but ignored in the 4 of Cups. The 4 of Cups describes sort of, this is in our example of this new relationship, this is after those 2 to 4 weeks where the first instances of reality start to set in. There are some elements of this person that are not my favorite thing in the world. I'm past infatuation at this point, and I'm recognizing the parts of it that I don't like as much, and wishing for things that aren't a part of it. I have this ideal image in my heart that yearns for this perfect partner, this perfect everything, and I don't have that. I don't have someone that is like this imagined person that doesn't exist. I don't have all the money in the world to do everything I want all the time. This is once we've been with it long enough, there's time for what we wish for even more to come forward, and that's represented here in the cycle in the 4 of Cups. Ruminating over what you don't have, or what's not perfect, usually leads to our 5 of Cups, which is definitely one of the darker stops on the Cups cycle. Even pictured here, you can see our clear blue skies have disappeared into this murky gray. Pictured, we've got someone who's looking over 3 cups that have been tipped over, while there are still 2 standing. And there's, in a word, this card encompasses the feeling of grief or loss very well. Usually when we're pining over something that we don't have, we're neglecting the things that we do, and they can start to get away from us. This is where suddenly in this relationship, sometimes you could see your 5 of Cups as a breakup card. Just very literal, feeling the loss of that partnership. You could also just look at it as, and I'm thinking of our previous analogy here, as the conflicts and the arguments have started to come up. And it feels like those happy-go-lucky times that we had previously have been lost. And now it's just strife and hurt that we're getting through, because there were these parts of the relationship that were complicated, that were hard, that I didn't like in the 4. In the 4 of Cups, I really didn't like. They were really uncomfortable to admit and to recognize that thing that they do is just so irritating, and it's really starting to get on my nerves, and I wish it would stop. And I didn't really notice it while I was infatuated, or I just forgave it, and but now it's really starting to get to me. My little pet peeves are coming forward. In the 5 of Cups, they've been brought to the surface. Now we're talking about it. Now we're really experiencing it. And it's all crashing down. I'm experiencing the reality of, I felt like this was perfect, like this was great in my 1, 2, 3. I was just over the clouds, happy with it. Now I'm feeling like part of that is gone. That little honeymoon, that little infatuated space has passed, and I miss it. I feel its absence distinctly. And there's something to say here in the 5 of Cups about how there are still 2 cups standing, there is a message in the Five of Cups that not all is lost in reality, but it describes the emotional experience, because our cups are really focused about our emotional experience here, the emotional experience of being consumed with the grief and with the loss, and how that, just like our dissatisfaction occupied most of our attention in the Four, the grief and the loss occupy most of our attention, our emotional attention, in the Five. And they just describe that space where you're really ruminating over it. Usually in the Five, it's about recognizing those two cups that are still standing, the things that you still do have that you can appreciate, that moves it forward conveniently into our Six. The Six of Cups. The Six of Cups is our nostalgia card. It's all about reflecting on feelings from the past. At this point, at the Six in the cycle, we have some earlier feelings to reflect on. And this is the moment where you remember the things that sparked that joy in the Ace, that you vibed on together in that Two of Cups, that everyone and you were sharing in and enjoying in the Three of Cups. You kind of revisit those feelings and reignite them a little. Even just in our own imagination, our own memory, I'm going back and re-experiencing those feelings in the context of what's still there. So this pet peeve happens and we got into this argument and it felt awful. And it felt like, my relationship was falling apart. But after we got through it, and at the end of the day, what was left is kind of the question that you're answering in the Six of Cups. You're on your emotional journey here in the Cups, your heart, after moving past the grief and the loss in the Five, is now moving toward let's pick up the pieces. What do I still have? Or what do I remember about what I lost that I can still hold on to fondly in my heart, that isn't necessarily lost, because I can still hold it with me. The Six of Cups is that kind of warm remembrance. I love the cups. Each of these kind of describe a different feeling, and there's a lot of detail in these cards, but they really do capture different emotional states of being, which can be really cool messages when drawn in a reading, especially if you're drawing a card to reflect like a mindset that I should assume to really further, my agenda. If the mindset is a Six of Cups, then it's just think back to what really gets you motivated and inspired in the first place, or what really makes you happy in the first place. Get in touch with that. Don't forget that in the middle of going through the whole cycle here of all the ups and downs that you experience emotionally outside of that. Once you've, I'm going to continue in the cycle here. I want to move on to the Seven. Once you've kind of hit that in the Six, and you've gotten in touch with kind of what sparked this feeling of joy and love in the first place, we move on into our Seven. Seven's a really fun place in the Cups cycle. It is the dreamer. Usually pictured is several goblets with a number of fantastic things in them, up in the clouds with an observer or a daydreamer at the bottom of the card who's kind of visiting all those places in their imagination. It's a cup. It's a card, rather, that's really about just exploring all the most fantastic things that could be in your heart. Just letting your heart go wild with your wildest dreams, and just experiencing the joy and the enthusiasm, the excitement, the optimism, the idealism of all those different things that you could have. This is, now that I've gotten through this, I'm looking at, there was a lot that I liked about this relationship, and now that I'm not as much ruminating over the parts of it that I don't like, or the argument that we had, and we've moved through some of those difficult spaces, I'm now looking forward in a way where I'm like, what more can I bring out of this? I'm really excited for the future, the potential of a brighter future where I really have a relationship. I'm sticking to my analogy here, where I really have a relationship that feeds me and makes me feel whole, and where we love each other and we're there to support each other. I'm just dreaming of all the things that make a relationship perfect to me. If I'm now at a point in the cycle where I've experienced a little bit of the real, and gone back to reflect on what about this really gets me excited, I'm like, well, what really gets me excited? What do I want going forward that really gets me excited? That's what you're doing in this 7. And this 7 is purely fantastical. It is not grounded in reality. In fact, I should take a moment to say none of these are grounded in reality. These are cups. And we're talking about our emotional experience, which is in no way like constrained by realistic measures. We can feel any way we want or any way that happens by circumstance about anything. I touched on this briefly when we were going over the swords cycle, how our thoughts are similar. Our thoughts are very subjective. We could think one thing about anything, and I look at a card. And of course, I love this as an example because I see cards and I have a lot of feelings associated with cards. They are soothing to me. This is where I'm doing my very therapeutic process of tarot reading and really investigating my feelings and my thoughts and putting them in order and moving myself toward better understanding, self-understanding, understanding of my situation. And like, there's so many feelings that come up for me when I'm handling a deck of cards that aren't necessarily associated with a pile of cardstock, and another person might have totally different feelings about cards. Oh, those are just, something that I love for games. And I see a deck of cards and I think of being bored on camping trips or whatever, but it's just a deck of cards. Our feelings can be anything in relation to that. And I'm speaking to that nature of feelings really, really just under the umbrella of this 7 of Cups being about you could feel dream of any potential or completely unrealistic future and just be fascinated with that and excited by that dream. And that feeling is captured in the 7 of Cups. I want to move it over into the 8. The 8 of Cups is an interesting spot on the journey. Once you have really explored a little bit of what you want in the 7, it becomes clear what you need to put behind yourself, which is what's happening in the 8. It becomes clear after this far in the cycle, there were things that came up for us that we were dissatisfied with in the 4 of Cups that became a little bit of our undoing or that caused us some loss and grief in the 5 of Cups. And we went back in the 6 to remember what it was that fired us up in the first place, arrived in the 7 where we started looking forward about what more I could have. The 8 is where I draw it all together and I do the work. The 8 is where I recognize the things that I wanted that I can't have in the 4. And I let go of them and move on. It's a really powerful place. And I think it's really important to mention that this letting go of some of those emotional attachments that we were harboring doesn't happen until this much later. It doesn't happen until after we've really, in our emotional process, visited back in the 6 at the core of what was getting us started and looked forward in the 7. Is when it becomes clear which feelings we were holding on to that we need to let go of in order to keep moving forward. You kind of have to run the whole gambit for that to become clear. What aspects of what I was dreaming about in the 4 were unrealistic, and which ones weren't? Which ones were fine for me to hold on to? It becomes clearer after I've spent some time dreaming about, and I'm going to go back to my analogy here, about what sort of I want out of this relationship. I was a little dissatisfied because I felt like, in the first couple weeks it was great, but after that, I just felt like they were kind of obsessed with themselves, and it was all about them and never really about me. And I just felt like I wanted more attention or something. And we got into this big argument over it because it seemed like we were just on another date, getting boba, having a good time. And I was tired about hearing about the workday, and I just kind of snapped. And that was my 5 of Cups moment, was when we had that conversation. And they didn't necessarily think that they were being unreasonable, and they were interested in me and wanted to hear about me too. And I don't know. and all this came up, and in the 7, I'm suddenly dreaming about, like, maybe we can have a relationship where there's space and structure for me to share a lot about me too, and I'm not going to just be steamrolled by my partner who just talks a lot about himself. And they are making an effort to listen to me and to hear from me, or maybe there's different ways that I can put myself forward a little more assertively myself, that'll meet this person on their level, and I'll get to express myself in the way that I'm wanting. And it's becoming clearer to me in the 8 at this point, this far down, that I need to let go of thinking that people are just always going to be like microscopically coming in to quietly listen to me, and I need to put myself out there a little bit, and that's how I get the feeling of being heard in a relationship. And I need to let go a little bit on that being handed to me, or that work being done for me. And that's what I realized I was holding on to that was unrealistic in that 4 that spun out all the way to here. And I'm ready to move on from that. I'm ready to let go of thinking that I will be served by doing nothing, or whatever. The specific example would, be what tied into this card where it appeared in a reading for you. But it's really about finding those feelings and those things that you were attached to that you're now ready to let go of and move on. Speaking of breakup cards, which no one was except me, this is another powerful breakup card. If that were sort of the scenario that we're describing here, this is where you're letting go of those attachments to past relationships. Where the 5 of Cups would be more about the feeling of losing a relationship, this is the I'm moving on feeling. And I'll try to keep it to the one analogy, the one example that I'm trying to drive all the way through the set here, which was I'm thinking of different ways that I can present myself in the relationship that'll realize more of my needs, and realizing that I don't need to put that all on my partner. And I'm letting go of some of my expectations for how the relationship was to go and what each of our roles were to be, because I'm realizing that it'll help me achieve my and our collective needs. And it puts us in a really, really powerful place in the Cups cycle, right at the 9 of Cups. The 9 of Cups is about like deep, profound wholeness, fulfillment, and just self-satisfaction. This is a point where you've arrived and you just are really happy with who you are. There's a certain smugness to this card that is just like, I have let go of the things that weren't serving me anymore. I understand what I want from the future, and I'm both excited by that, and I feel profoundly powerful and whole because I've let go of things that were holding me back, and this is all grown out of something that made me understand and really experience joy. And in the analogy that I'm running through the set here, this relationship, I have come to a place in this relationship where I can be a person that I'm really happy about and is being fed and served well by the relationship. That's great. 9 of Cups is a very fun, very powerful place. It segues into our 10, which is kind of the space where you've built yourself a healthy emotional support network, I would say. The 10 really pictures the happy, loving family. There's, the children and the parents here prancing about, having a wonderful time. They're all there for each other on an emotional level, and they're all ready and reciprocating a lot of emotional exchange. Following where we've grown in the cycle, this is I've done the work in the 8 to arrive at the 9 for myself. And now I'm just celebrating those feelings in my relationship. We've arrived here together, getting through some of the more difficult places. This is my partner, these are my friends, this is my family that are with me and that I've built an emotional relationship with over the course of this cycle, and that I've arrived with. It's kind of just the culmination of it all. We all have these emotional relationships forged at this point in the cycle, and I've realized myself and where I fit in it in a really definite way by this point. And having that all built up and just being in this 10 of Cups place where we're really giving and receiving and sharing emotional energy wraps us back around in the cycle back to the Ace, where this really is the 10 really is reason to celebrate that profound joy, or is an experience of profound joy. Or there can be new elements that we're experiencing in our lives around us that are bringing forth new feelings that are coming up in a new Ace of Cups. But the 10 really is a nice summary of the cycle and sets us up in a space where we're ready to receive a new emotional experience, whatever it may be. The cup set is fun. I love talking about the cups. There's just so many that describe these happy feelings, you know? A lot of times if a lot of cups are coming up in a reading, it's important to pay attention to your feelings and to how they bear and factor into the situation. We've still got some time. I don't know if there are any cards in particular that anyone wanted me to go over to close out our stream today, or if there's more detail on any of the cups set that anyone would like. But I am eyes on the chat. I think, in the absence of a prompt from the chat, that I'll draw us one card to close us out today. I'd like to try and run us until about 6. It feels like a good length for the shuffle. It's just a message. Talked a lot about the cups set today. And it talks a lot about feelings. And I enjoy this space because there's a small number of us gathered here right now. So I think that with this very last card, I'd like to offer a parting message for each of us to take with us to just kind of ruminate so that we can discover something deeper about our own emotional experience. Welcome back, Bill. I'm going to draw one card for us to take away from this stream to sum up what we can take to deepen our understanding of our own emotional experience. Just to kind of put a wrap on all this talk about the emotional cups suit. I'm glad, Bill, that you found the cups super interesting. I think so too. It's fun. The tarot's a great system just to talk about all the different kind of human experiences that we have, capture them in a card, and especially a look at all of our emotional experiences as they're represented in the tarot deck, at least. There's a lot implied about emotional experience in other cards in the tarot, for sure. But the cups are the suit that are really expressly speaking toward it directly and really illustrating it directly and bringing the emotional experience forward as really the highlight and the feature of what your reading is about. So I'm going to draw one card from this cute deck. This is my Calaveras playing card deck. I do a lot of reading with playing cards. It's called cartomancy when you do it with playing cards instead of a tarot card deck. One card for us to take this away. Learn something deeper about our own emotional experience. Talked about the Five of Swords a little bit last week. I believe as a closing remark today, I would like to point out how a lot of times we don't consider our emotions as necessarily very valuable or important. And a lot of times it feels like making our emotional needs a really serious priority is something that we almost feel a little guilty about sometimes. This card says, lean into that. Try that out. Why not? Why aren't my emotional needs just the most important thing? in this fair world. Why not? Let's see what you make out of that. Bill, I'm glad that you love this deck. I know. It's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Such a beautiful deck of cards. Thank you so much, Sonora, for getting me this deck of cards. All right. I'm going to wrap up our stream right there. That's our food for thought. Act like your emotions matter. Act like they're the most important thing. See what it gets you. Thanks for tuning in to the shuffle, everyone. See you next week.